Hi, hola, cuckoo, ciao, oi. Welcome to Romanophonie. My name's Amelia. Today I'll be interviewing two very special guests, Iglika and Alex from Monoglossia. If it weren't for them, I probably wouldn't have started my YouTube channel, so huge thanks to them. Also, you should absolutely subscribe to their channel if you have any interest at all in full language lessons, demo lessons of world languages, language course reviews, world cinema reviews, and literary discussion. So welcome, Iglika and Alex.
Oh,
Thank you for
thanks for
inviting
the
us. It's a pleasure
Yeah,
to be here and congratulations on starting your channel. We can see it's doing great already.
mm,
Really great
a-
videos. Well done. Keep it up.
and
thank
thank
you.
you for the kind words.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
no, my pleasure. So, my first question is, what are your motivations for learning Spanish, Italian, and in your case, Iglica, also French?
Do you want to start?
Go ahead if you want.
All right, sure. So in my case, well, when it comes to Spanish, I have to admit at first it was purely for business reason. When I was in school, I started, I picked German as a second option, like second language. We didn't have much in terms of second languages resources. Like, unfortunately, we're a bit like in, let's say, things are slightly improving, but it is still pretty difficult to actually learn languages in the French system.
Sure.
Our son is going through it, so with like I can testify it's a slightly better, but still it's not ideal. So initially I picked German because it was kind of like a school specialty, and it seemed interesting at the time. And there were less less specific courses in Spanish. And then when I went to uni, I saw that there was some business opportunity with Spanish. So I thought, like, why not actually learn some Spanish? But I'm also a big film buff, and in general, like the whole like, be it Spanish films or like Latin American films, are just absolutely amazing. So, and not only that, but also I had some Spanish friends, so I continued learning Spanish a bit. But I have to admit, like, it's just like anything that you start purely for business reason, it fell a bit on the like to the side, because then we ended up like living in Bulgaria for a while, and then it's difficult to practice languages that you're not in direct contact with. So that was it. And as for Italian, I never really truly studied it, but I had a lot of Italian colleagues in Bulgaria. So, just like listening to some like certo and si. It's kind of fun too. Just like, yeah. When your French is like, okay, that sounds very similar. So yeah, that was basically my experience with kind of like how languages, like Roman languages.
You studied a bit of Latin in school.
I did. Yeah. It helped for Spanish, because we took like French and Spanish take different like words with like similar roots, but with very different results. Like, let's say, for example, like soñar, and it's like to dream. French is rêver, so you would think that there's no link, but there is songe in French. So and you kind of, it harkens back to Latin roots. So I guess it helps, like for like specifically for Spanish and French, because they have slightly different roots. Like I think Italian is closer, but I think Iglika is probably better at saying you this than me, because she actually studied Italian. So yeah.
Yeah, so in my case, I learned these three Romance languages for very different reasons and in very different points in life. Spanish, I started when I was in high school. So it has a very special place for me. It was the first kind of foreign language that I started learning, because English was like the main language in my school, so it was not even considered a foreign language. And I had been dreaming of studying another language for a long time, but it was not that obvious at the time. Everyone who was taking some kind of courses out of school, it was English. There weren't enough resources, or it was too expensive. So it was a very happy day for me when I started learning Spanish. And I also think starting younger kind of makes it more natural. And that's why with Italian, I think even though I have the same like level officially certified, I don't think Italian will ever be as natural for me. I started learning Italian a few years later, mostly because I like the way it sounds. I like the music. I was listening to Tiziano Ferro at the time. And as for French, I hadn't planned it. I learned it with Alex. I started when our son was really young, so I was like listening to Alex and reading books on my own. And then at university, I took some intermediate course at some point. It was a bit messy all over the place. I took an intermediate course, but then I tried to take an advanced exam and I passed it. And then eventually, after living in France for a few years, I passed the last level, the C2 DALF.
If I may, actually, it's very interesting because we just realized that neither of us mentioned Portuguese, and it turns out that it's mainly because we didn't have the resource to, well, the courses to actually learn it. And it's kind of interesting. It feels like it falls on the it falls on the wayside, and I do wonder why, actually.
To me it's kind of weird because there are more native speakers of Portuguese than French and Italian. So it's interesting how, like, I guess for political and geographical reasons it kind of falls on the back end.
Yeah, it's a bit sad because it's a beautiful language, but we ended up not studying it, like partly because of the kind of limitations that we had.
Yes, it was never offered around me. I guess the same in France.
Alex, I have a question for you. You said you like Spanish and Latin American films. Do you have any suggestions for people learning Spanish?
So, well, I'm pretty sure I do not know if it's a very good suggestion for learners, because I think it's a film that is set in the south of Spain, and if I'm not mistaken, they have a pretty strong accent. But my favorite Spanish film is Volver, so with by Pedro Almodovar and with Penelope Cruz, and it's a great film, but I do not know if it's perfect for learning Spanish. I think, but maybe I'm mistaken, I do feel like Latin American film, and especially like the accent is more it's slightly light, it's not as strong. It's like, I do think that Spanish as spoken in Spain is probably a bit tougher for someone who is not used to the r sound, for example. And maybe, like, you can tell me if I'm mistaken, but my second favorite film is the Abre los Ojos. It's an Argentinian film. It's very good. It's really, really good. It's a bit dark. It's they're following some serial killers. Well, not like a killer, like it's some. So maybe it's like not like fun topic. Volver either. Like, it's a great film, but like it's kind of dark and deep topics.
We saw a couple of kind of supernatural films with supernatural elements. There was one called Durante la Tormenta. Can't remember which country it was from. It was Latin American, maybe Argentina, and that one with the time travel. Forgot his name too. Chrono Crímenes.
Yeah, it's really good.
I love this one. This was so well made.
And I was going to like also like propose the unfortunately I only have the English name in mind, but it's like Pan's Labyrinth. I think it's El Labirinto del Fauno in Spanish, but it's by Guillermo del Toro. It's one of his early films, and it's completely in Spanish. It's set in Spain, so it's also really good. Maybe go for that one if like as a recommendation for learning Spanish. Yeah.
And Iglika, could you touch upon how you got to a C2 level in French? Because a lot of people, when you say you get to a C2 level, they really want to know how to get to such an advanced level in a language.
Yes, true. I get asked this question sometimes. Well, it was a little messy, like just the way I learned the different Romance languages for different reasons. I passed different levels of French, like in different places even, and different points in life. So like I never took any lessons as a beginner. I was just like reading on my own and listening to people. Then I studied at university at B1 level, but I tried to take the B2 and C1 at the end of the year. I wasn't sure which one would fit me better, but I passed both of them. And a few years later, we spent some time living in France. So I thought I wanted to try with the C2, and we were in Bulgaria at the time. So I took 1 3-hour lesson before taking the exam, and I passed. And I think it's about the process. I don't think it's enough of motivation to think like I have to pass this level because of work or university or whatever reasons. It's for this kind of level, you really have to love the language, like love the literature and enjoy learning it, not just like anticipate passing the level, but really enjoy dealing with the language.
And Alex, as a native French speaker, has that helped you with Spanish and Italian? Have there been ways it's maybe hindered your learning of those languages?
Actually, it's a very interesting point. Like, I would like to finish on a positive note, so I'll stick to the elements that actually might hinder you from like learning another Roman language. It feels a bit bad, but when it comes to Italian, it's very hard not to, like, for a French person to be like, well, okay, basically it's just like French, but with a tonic accent, and you know, that's it. There isn't much more to it, and it feels a bit bad, like because Italian people are actually really quite good in French, and we don't really put in the effort to learn Italian, for example. And it feels a bit derogatory on our side, but that unfortunately is kind of how it is, like with the. But as for Spanish, it did help quite a lot in terms of grammar. Like, I guess you can see through like our like different videos, like I think I'm doing a decent job in Bulgarian, but like grammar is not necessarily my forte. So the fact that the grammar is very similar to French kind of helps. Like, and yeah, that's yeah, I guess that's what there is to it. But
I noticed some interference with French, with your Spanish, like you asking, is there a double F in this word? I'm like, there's never double F.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
You just like stop thinking about it.
Yeah, because Spanish, you typically read what's written, unlike French, which is a bit more messy, like English in terms of the spelling.
Yeah, it is quite messy. I don't know about Italian. Actually, I'm kind of curious because like I'm a native, but like maybe like Iglika as a non-native, did that help? Let's say, for example, your knowledge of like Spanish and Italian, like learning French.
Yes. Yes, actually, it's a bit ironic because I had studied Spanish before I studied French for the first time. So at first it helped me a lot, but then eventually, like, my French became much stronger than my Spanish. So it's the other way around, if anything.
Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah.
And how do you avoid confusion between the different Romance languages?
So like really on the let's say on a day-to-day basis, we do use like mainly English, and there is like Bulgarian and French, so we have like this really kind of very separated approach to languages, and so and so basically when it comes to other languages, we sort of how should I put it? It's clearly compartmented. So in my head, it's like, okay, if there is Spanish, then it's something else entirely. I don't know if that makes sense, like what I just said, but yeah, if you wish, there's not the I put in another compartment in my brain, so that's why I can explain it, I suppose.
Yeah.
So
I guess I do a similar thing, because since there are a lot of similarities, but also there are a lot of differences, so I think using the differences to kind of separate them in your mind is helpful, so you don't like start speaking Italian with a French accent or something like that.
Yeah. But sadly enough, and I guess that's another topic that's why I started in this way, it's like we don't tend to be in a situation where we'll use like freely another language, like let's say Spanish or Italian. I got to, let's say, like the closest to kind of using Spanish that I was going to Barcelona, and they don't speak Spanish. Well, they try not to speak Spanish. They try to speak Catalan and not. so yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. So we'd never really kind of use it in a kind of real life setting, if you wish. Ironically, I end up having more experience with Bulgarian, which might seem weird because it is far from like it's a Slavic language, but I do borderline feel more confident in like to the point that actually some Bulgarian words slip in when I try to speak Spanish.
You could confuse like Spanish with Bulgarian rather than like with French.
I know. It's really strange and paradoxical, but that's what it is.
At some point, I was preparing almost simultaneously for a Spanish and Italian exam, and I'm not sure this was a very good choice, because people usually say don't try to learn two similar languages at the same time, especially at the same level. So when I was preparing, I did say occasionally in front of my teachers things in the other language.
My last question would be, what is your favorite Romance language, if you have one?
Well, I kind of like the messiness of Roman languages. Like you can actually get something like Romansh, like which is this kind of almost Germanic sounding dialect, and like Swiss dialect in Switzerland. Of course, you have the the neighbors like Romanian, which is some language that we don't necessarily think about in terms of like Roman languages, but yeah, they do have like they're completely part of the like Roman group, and all the languages in between, like Catalan is very interesting to me because it borderline feels easier than Spanish, because you clearly feel like some link with the, let's say, south of France dialect, to the point that kind of helps, like,
I mean, they are geographically closer, so it makes sense.
So yeah, I suppose, but I will stick to Romansh. I really find it fascinating. So yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to say Spanish, actually. Sorry, Alex. The reason is, like I said, I started when I was very young, so it has a very special place for me. But also, I have never been in a Spanish-speaking country, so it's something that's a bit of a dream for me. Like a dream of using it in a country where it's a native language. Maybe even like living there one day.
You should visit Machu Picchu in Peru.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Definitely.
We do some kind of running like marathons. I noticed recently.
Sure. Yeah. And do you have any last tips for people learning multiple Romance languages, or even just one?
Okay. If you already know a language, a Romance language, maybe don't rely on it too much, because I know it hindered me more than anything. Like to the point that was actually easier for me to learn it through English than like through French. And I know it's kind of like weird mental gymnastic, but like maybe try to lean on that more.
And I will say just go for it. Some people think if they already know one Romance language, it will be unnecessary or more difficult even if they start learning another one. I don't think so. Sometimes it takes a bit of organization, maybe waiting a bit, achieving a higher level at the previous language, but absolutely, like, my tip will be go for it.
Sure, I completely agree. So thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you too.